This is Futurebuilders podcast, and I'm your host, Teemu Uotila. I'm an enthusiastic future explorer working with a Finnish tech company. Together with my guests, we are building the future today. Are you in? This is Futurebuilders podcast with Dean Seddon, a founder and director of Maverrik. Together with him, we'll be finding out what does it take for businesses to succeed in the future? How can you be a happy millionaire? What does growth of businesses require from individuals in the future? Maverrik helps companies to build and execute plans to grow their businesses. So if you're a small or a medium-sized company, they come in, help you out and see how you can grow in the future. And as Dean is building these future companies, I invited him to join the podcast. So Dean, feel free to tell more about yourself and your brief background.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast with you. So a little bit about me. The name of the company is Maverrik, and that's always been my kind of motto in life. So the business is really an expression of my own viewpoint on the world, which is that there is a way to get to where you want to be, and sometimes it's a little unconventional, sometimes it's things you've not thought of. So what we do is we stand alongside companies and really help them figure out where to go next and how to get to the end place they want to be, or the goal in the next 12 months. My background has been started in the kind of world of marketing and sales at 16. Did some pretty unconventional things, and in 2012 I was hired to basically do an event at Wembley Stadium. They gave me no budget and told me I had to sell 40,000 tickets in 6 weeks, and I had to find a way, which we did, and we pulled off. And basically my whole journey has been helping businesses get through and overcome challenges related to growth. So that's a kind of flavor of what we do. And I love the underdog and the big challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine if you have over 30,000 people you need to fill in with no money, then that's going to be it's going to require some creativity on how to solve that.
It certainly is.
So how would you describe your typical customer or typical person you are helping out? Do they have some certain profile?
They do and they don't. The classic profiling probably doesn't apply in this sense, because we work with two types of companies, really. We work with companies that are starting up, and they've prepared, they've planned, but then the plan doesn't go to plan, which is so often in any business, and they're looking for some external help to solve the problems quickly. So it isn't a classic profile, other than it's a startup and they've got a plan that's not going to plan. Or the second type of customer we work with is a more developed business. They've got through the years of struggle. They're hitting the 1 to 5 million turnover, and they're looking at the what next scenario. They've done everything that they've done, and now they're going, how do we do this quicker, smarter, and take this to the next stage? So it's really about a growth profile for a company, rather than they're in manufacturing or hospitality or that kind of work. But we generally do work with B2B companies. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the whole strategic part of things is always funny to me, because when I also spar with some of the big companies here in Finland, and I always find it funny when they introduce their 5 or 10 year plans, how they're going to move onwards. And then if 5 year passes and you do a retrospective on how much those things actually came to life, what they have planned, it's usually maybe like 10-15% of them actually happen. So do you focus on the sort of like this short-term scope where you can see what future happens, or do you also focus on a very, very long-term with, these high mission statements and stuff like that?
I think it's always good I've met a lot of business owners who've started with an idea in mind that morphs. So I think it's always good to have a clearly defined vision, mission, and as the leaders of the business, what you want to get out of it as a kind of a standing document that says this is how we're going to do things. Because ultimately, we know in a day the world can change based on what somebody does because of our digital era and our digital world. So we'll constantly be adapting to what's happening, but we do need those kind of lines in the sand to say this is what we will and won't do, and this is how we will and how we won't do. And it should be treated that they are like your 10 commandments, shall we say, your code, that then you can come back to and say, well, if this isn't working, do we need to challenge the code? But you need those things there in the first place. Otherwise, your business will just evolve by itself.
Yeah.
And that can be quite a dangerous and disappointing thing for a business owner or a founder when their business morphs way beyond or skews out into a vision that wasn't where they wanted to be.
Yeah, definitely. What about when you work to smaller companies? I would imagine they focus on innovation and stuff like that. How do you see innovation? Is it something that you can actually force, or does it happen by accident and organically, mostly in these cases?
I think if you look back over the last 20, 30 years, you'll see lots of people trying to force innovation. But real innovation kind of works when it makes something more straightforward. So when it makes something easier, that's when innovation really takes off. I mean, if you look at, some of the developments in technology and the weird inventions we've had that seem to be all singing, all dancing, that never actually took off, it's because they tried to go against what is the universal reason to innovate, is to make things easier, quicker, faster, or cheaper. And I think that's where, if innovation ticks those boxes, then that is a win.
Yeah, I also agree on that point. That at least when I look at how things happen in Finland and in Europe, it's usually the pain that drives the innovation. That something is very tiresome, boring, and hard to do, and people figure out how to do it easier because I think it's in our basic nature that we are lazy, and if we want to optimize something that we have possibility to optimize, we're going to do it. So it's also the pain that helps us.
Despite humans knowing that comfort zones are not good for us, we do enjoy them quite a bit. So pain is a good motivator for change and for innovation and for action.
Yeah, definitely. How do you define growth yourself? Do you define it by financial numbers, personal growth? What's your sort of like these key metrics that you like to focus on?
So these have changed quite a bit over the last 10 years. But when I was starting in business, it was all about sales and business. But then as I've got a bit older, I've started to think about what do I want from the business. So there's no point being an unhappy millionaire. You want to be a happy millionaire, and that's about doing business in a way that I'm not saying that you can have everything the way you want, but building a business that you're happy to look after and serve for the long term. So yes, it is for me. There is a financial element of it, but there is a big one for me is making a difference. So we've seen the rise of almost like causes within companies, and it's become a thing that everybody talks about. But for me, I really do enjoy making a difference, to the extent that sometimes making a difference is my number one priority. And then it becomes about how do I make money from that? And that has served me well, albeit sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense. When I make a difference and I deliver value for people, the money sorts itself out.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught in numbers because they're quite easy to understand for people. So you get sort of like blinded that you have this certain amount of euros or pounds that you like to hit, and then you keep chasing that and forget everything else. So it's very good to have this kind of 360 view on what you're actually doing and not only focusing the numbers because they're only one metric.
When I was learning to drive, this is a little story. I was kind of one of those people who knew it all when I was learning to drive, and I thought I just had to jump through the hoops to get the certificate, and then I'm on the road and I can drive myself. And my driving instructor, when I was having lessons, said something to me because I was all kind of over the road, and it was due to basically I was looking in the wrong place. And he said, "Is what you focus on is where you'll go." And for me, one of the things I've learned about the pursuit of money is you'll never get it because it's always kind of out of reach, and it's the worst way to run a business. To just, I know this sounds like madness. Yes, we all need to think about budgets and money and revenue and profit margins and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to offering an exchange of value, which is the fundamentals of business, you have to not focus on the money. You have to focus on the value, because otherwise you're just a cash collection machine.
Yeah.
And when you become a cash collection machine, your customer service, your value, everything just collapses.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's an easy number to sort of like get blinded by. And I agree that it's never enough if you only focus on that. So you definitely have these more softer values in the mix. Because, after I think there was this study made in US that after you hit $75,000 a year, the extra money doesn't bring any more happiness to you. So that's sort of like the threshold of what people have in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you define growth in the future? Let's say 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Do you see that people's mindsets are changing? Are they going towards more these evolutionary purposes or whatever? Or how do you see that happening?
I think growth in people are far more concerned now with the difference they make. Maybe this is just my perception, but I feel that people are more concerned with what their life has meant to them and what they've achieved with their lives, more so than they were maybe 20 or 30 years ago. And I think growth, we're seeing companies, because of the way the social networks have worked, they've developed companies where there is an agenda within the company to do good. And the cynic might say that that's because they're terrified of something going wrong on social media or a bad PR stunt, so they're constantly investing in social good and corporate social responsibility. But I really think that we're entering an era where business will be more socially responsible, and I think we're seeing this already in a lot of organizations. They're using their social good as a marketing tool so that they can show how good they are and how great people they are and why people should do business with them. So I think that's going to be a key element. Yeah. I also think the changing and shifting world that we live in, from a global point of view, we may see some challenges with the politics of how growth happens, in that people may be more cautious about which companies they'll engage with, which companies they'll work with, based on the politics of the day and how they engage in their supply chain. And so I see a whole ethical, moral and political dynamic weighing into what would have been 20, 30 years ago, probably just a commercial objective of we're gonna grow and we're gonna get more business.
Yeah, and regarding social media, like you said, it can be used for good and measuring impact that the organizations have. But the downside is that it can also be used as a weapon of mass destruction if you have the required resources. So it's a good and bad thing at the same time, in my view at least.
I think it is, and I think the danger. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and the danger of social media at the moment is the inbuilt confirmation bias that it can create, in that we connect with people similar to us. The networks show us content that they think we'll like, and we could actually go through a period of time where, ironically, with the openness of information, we could go through a period of time where we're only seeing the stuff that we agree with. And that could then make it harder for other businesses to break through into, if you're in the Apple world, Apple covers you and connects you and is your world. How do you then rival that in the networks where we spend so much time?
Yeah, you sort of like create this own bubble that you live in, and everything that's within the bubble is right, and everything that's outside is wrong. So
yeah, or irrelevant.
Yeah, so yeah, that's definitely a thing. I think the one thing in social media is that it's very hard to get your message through sometimes when you're only writing stuff and doing like that. So for instance, doing videos and other kind of ways to presenting your ideas and concepts, it's way more effective rather than just posting a Facebook message or Twitter message or whatever, because people always interpret things in very different ways.
Yeah, we all have different learning styles, and interestingly enough, there seems to be a resurgence in printed matter, which I've seen a lot because of obviously the European regulations on GDPR making it very difficult to use some digital means now.
Yeah.
And everybody's so uncertain about how that affects you that, has it killed email marketing? Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. But I'm seeing a lot of people almost like, when you receive a direct mail piece through your letterbox or something, it's getting more attention now because we've gone through a period of getting so little of what you class as quality, interesting stuff through the mail.
Yeah.
So I think the whole thing's going to rebalance, but I mean, fascinating that audio has seen a massive resurgence in terms of podcasts. It was a thing when the internet was young, shall we say, but it's becoming more and more popular now as well.
Yeah, and as a media, for instance, like this podcast is that you can listen it anywhere and any place. It's not tied into time and place like radio shows or anything like that. So it's very good. One downside is, of course, in it that you have these social media platforms. So whatever is the responsibility of the content that is created. So now everyone can be a journalist if they like, because they can post stuff and people believe it or not, but they can get their voice heard. So that sort of, in my mind, that's a sad thing because it has killed some of the early days good journalism that used to be in there, and because everyone posts their own news and stuff.
Well, the great opportunity is we can go onto a website today, and in 30 minutes we can have our own news channel. That's the great opportunity. The downside to that is there is no way of vetting our news, and we could just write whatever we like. We could write our own propaganda and we can publish it without consequence. And we're seeing this, without going into politics too much. We've seen this, and America's being torn apart by this now. And there is, and it goes both sides of the fence. There's the people producing content that is questionable or inaccurate, and there's also the people challenging that content and how they behave, in that we're seeing keyboard warriors rise, and we're seeing inaccuracy and inaccurate content rise, and it's creating an unhealthy environment, I think, that isn't good. And I don't know how we'll address it, but I think we all have to wise up and take responsibility for ourselves in terms of what we say, but also what we publish, so that we don't mislead other people, and we share things that actually will be positive in some way.
Yeah, I do hope that it happens through through growth itself. People growing as they learn use these social media platforms and internet and all that stuff. I don't believe that it can be achieved through regulation or anything like that, but the change has to be coming from within the people.
Yeah, that's the only way. Just like innovation, the only way you clean up the social networks is through individuals cleaning themselves up, and smartening up so that they don't just be baited by ridiculous made-up articles that they'll actually fact check for themselves.
Yeah, that's definitely. Well, maybe someone can create some sort of AI for that can help do the background fact checks on your claims, and then say if the news is real or not, and help you vet out the wrong ones. Don't know that, but let's see if someone can create that. But you help companies to find an edge over their competitors. How do you define that edge? Do you do this meticulous R&D phase or due diligence with the companies, working with them, or do you have some sort of method on how you approach it?
We have a general methodology, but it's very much about a customer-centric mentality in terms of we have a belief that every purchase, every sale, every service provided is solving a problem of one degree or another for a customer. So there's an old adage of sell the solution to the problem you solve. What we encourage people to really understand the problem that they solve. So that doesn't necessarily mean a cataclysmic problem, but if somebody's struggling for time, you might want to get a virtual assistant. The problem is I have no time. And when businesses truly understand the problem that they're solving, the gap that they're filling, they can understand the key messages and the key things that they need to offer to make it easier for their prospective customers. So our philosophy really is rooted around that. And from that, then you can analyze what your competition are doing and how their offer is filling that gap, so that you can then tailor your offer to either compete with their solution or find another way of presenting the solution or another way of solving the problem. So we've seen this in virtual assistants. Now they're becoming very digital, but I can see spaces where virtual assistants can be more interactive in terms of there could be an AI VA, for an example. That could be really lucrative for, say, some of the big VA companies. So there's lots of different opportunities, but it is about understanding the problem that you're going to solve and the customer that has that problem.
Yeah.
And that's where we start from. And then we'll basically ask them to go through and say, that is a process in and of itself, and look at how they're communicating the problem. Because often we talk about how clever something is, and really the crux of any sale is, can this fix this, and can I afford to pay for it? And they're the key elements that we have to answer for people. And once you get that, you have something really kind of special that you can run with. And then it's about finding those people and communicating that consistently.
How do you do? Do you do some sort of market research on the companies that you're working with, or do you just help them to create these products or services? Because I find that if you ask some free-form question from the masses, you don't usually get very good ideas on what the company should do, because people are not that imaginative.
No, so market research can be very, very useful, but at the same time, it can also be very misleading. So one of our team here used to work with Coca-Cola in the southern Europe, and when they decided to bring out the new taste Coke or the new Coke, they did market research that said that this was a great flavor. The problem was that the research wasn't connected with Coke. So when the new Coke came out in the new flavor, guess what? They preferred the old Coca-Cola, and it was the market research that was flawed. So what we'll do is we'll work with a business and do some market research. We'll do some competitor analysis, and we'll look at their business and those kind of red line values and goals and objectives they want to achieve, and try and pull all of that together. But we do it from an external point of view, and the value in doing it from an external point of view is if you're sat in your own business trying to solve your own problems, guess what? Sometimes you become blinkered to what the real issues are. The real obstacles are hidden from you because you're so in the middle of what's going on. So we come at it completely external. We look at the competitors, we look at the market, we look at the solutions that they're offering, or the services, or the goods and products, and then come back to them, and we'll literally lock the clients in a room for a day and go through all of that stuff. And sometimes that's a really easy process, and sometimes we have some resistance from clients because they go, yeah, our brand awareness is really, really high, and then we present them with facts and figures. And a couple of times I've rang prospective customers in the room with their board sat there and asked them survey questions, and they've been baffled that people didn't really know who they were. So it is quite an intensive process, but there's an incredible amount of value in having that outside perspective, because it really helps you understand where you need to adjust and change.
Yeah. Regarding these organizations, if you look at big organizations, not many of them have survived for over 100 years nowadays. So I always find it fascinating that guys like IBM or Nokia, they've done excellent work in changing their whole business logic and business dynamic. Nokia, for instance, started making rubber boots, and then they moved to tires and cell phones, and now they're doing IoT stuff. And IBM started back in the 1800s, or was it 1900s? I think late 1900s. And well, they didn't have computers then, but now they are leading provider in that field also. So even if you're a big company, you can still have this kind of organization changes if you're willing. How do you see in your customers? Are they willing to do totally different things, or do they want to keep doing what they used to do and not venture into new fields?
Well, I think that's a lot in that one, but I guess the success story of people like IBM and the big organizations that have been around for a long time is they've made a conscious effort to not lose their entrepreneurial spirit. So that may well be that, IBM has a wing of the organization that is looking at where do we go next? How do we do this? What are the new markets we're coming up with? How do we adapt to what's going on in the world today and tomorrow and in 10 years' time? So they've stayed connected to their entrepreneurial spirit and ambition, but at the same time, the organizations and people that feel reluctant to change have probably disconnected from the reason they started. When you start up, you have a vision, a dream, and a plan, and you want to see it happen. And when you disconnect from that, you become a manager. And managers, I feel, are there to keep things moving. They're to keep the processes working, to keep the systems working, and to keep everything running and to maintain the status quo. But when you shift your whole organization into management, you will never innovate or advance. And the key, whether you're a small business or a huge multinational, you have to keep connected to the entrepreneurial spirit and say, where are we going to be next? What are we going to do next? Why do we do things this way? And often when you're in a small business, you're a manager and an entrepreneur, and the entrepreneurial spirit sometimes gets sacrificed for the management. As you expand, when you start up, it's all energy. Let's get some business. Let's get this on the road. Let's get this done. And then, if you work like that, you'll get past that kind of startup phase, and then you'll be drowning in paperwork and HR and all that kind of stuff. And the entrepreneurial element is sacrificed at that point to do all of the paperwork and the stuff to keep the business in the status quo. And I think that's the biggest challenge for any business of any size, is management and the entrepreneurial spirit that keeps things innovating.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing when we work with big companies. Their top management or leadership, CXO level, they are willing to embrace the change, and so are the sort of like this employee level. But then the managers in the middle, they are usually the one that have the most resistance of change or whatever the change is. And I think one of the main reasons why they have is because they are afraid, because it's unknown, so they don't know their place in the future of the organization, and they are scared. And I don't know if you share the same kind of view.
Yeah, I mean, the nature of managers is to bring stability to an organization. So in a change scenario, there can be resistance. And sometimes if you have a very entrepreneurial leadership team, it can be very good to have those people who just say, hey, slow down a minute and let's just look at this. Because just like an unchanging organization or an organization that doesn't change or resists change, you can have the polar opposite of this. And I've seen some very big organizations that are like this, where change is so embraced that actually it brings a form of chaos, in that nobody really knows what we're doing. Nobody commits to any projects because they know it could change or get cancelled. So I think there's a fine balance in the management world of having people who are ready to change, leaders who are ready to take people on a journey of change, and not polarize into their both camps of one that wants to change and innovate and just be in a constant innovation, and the polar opposite of that, of people who don't want to change. There has to be that middle ground, and both sides have to give and take.
How do you see, if you would be on a big organization, how would you handle this? Would you create a separate organization along with the stable one in order to do the innovation and do the change, or would you try to keep it all within the same corporation, the same organization?
In a big organization, what I would try and say is that you need an environment where you can foster change. You need an environment to foster innovation. So sometimes in a big organization, it's very easy to slow things down or stop something from happening through procedures and processes. So I think if it's good for a big organization to have almost like a change or innovation team who can look at things and go, is there a better way of doing it? That said, that team could, if it's not communicated properly across the business, could be resisted by the rest of the organization for fear that they are going to get rid of them or looking for how they're making mistakes.
Yeah.
But I think you do need that, because you need any change or innovation needs to be protected until it's fully formed. And, just like statistics in an organization of any size, you can find reasons not to change or to do change differently or to put this on hold. So you need a separate wing to at least start something that then can be brought into the whole organization once it's had that kind of initial gestation cycle to learn and see whether this could work, and then you could pilot it maybe in the organization itself. And we're seeing a lot of big organizations bringing in what they're calling now intrapreneurs, entrepreneurial people within big corporate organizations, to just look at how things can be done better, faster, and really approach things from a different angle. So I think it's good, but I think it needs to have its own space and be protected and and have the freedom to flesh out and play with ideas and new approaches without it being completely quashed because of corporate bureaucracy. And then it can be explored in practicality once it's got through its initial birthing process, shall we say.
Yeah, I think in big organizations, that's definitely an issue, having this huge bureaucracy in place that you need to jump the hoops and loops in order to get things done. So that can be crushing to some people that they don't even want to try. How do you define if organization is in crisis? How do you tackle that if they are in a total chaos and they don't have growth and they don't know what to do? How would you approach that, and how do you define companies that get past that?
So it really depends on what level of crisis as to what you do, obviously. But what I've found with organizations that are either changing rapidly or being forced to change rapidly, is that you cannot allow a sense of panic to creep in. And it's very easy to do, but what happens is decisions get fired off and there's no coordination. And really what you have to do is go, right, stop. Let's look at things. What do we need to change? What is the issue? Where's the crisis stemming from? And then proactively tackle the issue. What I've found is a lot of organizations will go into kind of emergency measures, and departments will fracture off and they'll do their bit, and marketing will do their bit, and sales will do their bit, and none of it is together. And what happens is a lot of mixed messages sends out through teams, mixed messages to customers, mixed messages to supply chains, and it just creates an absolute mess. So you have to have, this is the problem. How are we going to solve it? What is marketing going to do? What is sales going to do? What is customer service? All these different departments. How are we going to pull this all together?
Yeah.
And then be aware any change process needs consistently following through, and old habits die hard.
Yeah, it's definitely for organization. It's hard to unlearn and stuff. So.
It's hard to unlearn, and it's hard to keep a new process moving when everybody is used to something else. So you almost have to force change, because we're creatures of habit, and that is the biggest issue of, you have to break the old habits and force in new ones. You have to replace them.
Do you see that the big and small companies and organizations, do they behave the same when in crisis, or are there some different nuances?
I think they do behave the same, really. The difference is there's more people involved in a bigger organization, but essentially what happens is your business owner or your management team or your employee count will all respond to the issue and be looking for a way forward. They will look to the leadership. Now, in a very small business, that could be 1 or 2 or 5 people, and they're looking for one person to say, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And as soon as that happens, everybody knows what they need to do, and they can act on it. In a small organization, what you can find is that the leader will go into chaos mode all of his own and fire off lots of different things in lots of different directions to try and do something.
Yeah, the shotgun approach, so to speak.
And just throw everything at the wall and see what happens. And in actual fact, when you look at a big organization, that's exactly what happens in a big organization. It just happens at maybe departmental level or director level of a big organization, and the board is unified, but then how that is rolled out in each respective area fragments.
Yeah, I think in every organization, the biggest issue, or at least top 3 issue usually is communications. How do you get the message abroad, and how you make sure that everyone understand what you're saying? Because when you have tens of thousands of people are going to interpret stuff very differently. So I guess that's always going to be a problem, and I at least don't have any idea how to get past that.
Well, the age-old problem with communication is it's not what you say, it's what people understand. And we can say, lots of things, and this is the problem with targets, is that if you say to somebody, we have to have a retention rate of 74% or 80% or 90%, people will do what's necessary to get that, and then they may cut corners on something else. And we saw that during the financial crash, in that certain targets were so important, corners were cut that essentially compromised the world's economy. And this is the issue any business faces, is making sure that where the business is going is not just communicated, is understood, and why. So, if you're looking to really shift markets or go into a new vertical or whatever you're looking to do, you have to go, this is what we're trying to do. We're going to redevelop this product or this service for this marketplace or this vertical. This is why, and this is what we hope to achieve. And that has to be recommunicated in different forms, in visual, in, just like we said about social media, in all the learning styles, so that employees, customers can see it, get it, grab hold of it, and understand it. And that is the biggest thing in our age now. It's not about communicating, because there's so much communication tools, so many ways to communicate. It's about getting understanding. And that's what we have to really, really focus on, is people have to understand what we're trying to communicate and what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. You mentioned about the financial crash, and that actually gives a good segue to this. How do you see businesses and organizations being socially and ethically responsible to society? Classical term naturally is that businesses are there to provide value to stock owners, which is natural. But how do you see in future nowadays the social and ethical aspects of things?
I think the power of a person has increased because of social media, and because of that, obviously, companies are more aware that one person can challenge a big organization. In the future, how do we build more responsible companies? We have to radically, I think, change our way of educating people. And I say this because when I was in school, I did all my subjects, maths, English, and all sciences and all those things. But nobody ever taught me about values other than the general values that every society. Now we talk about what is important to you. We learn our values from our family. But interestingly, there was a statistic on the radio this morning that 25% of young teenage girls have experimented or engaged in self-harm. Now, I'm not going to go all kind of down on this, but we're obviously not learning the values from our families like we used to. We're learning the values from what media we're consuming and the challenges we're seeing in the world. We're training ourselves to be perfect. We have to be Instagram ready and all those things. So our values, by the very nature of the world we're in, are being learned and ingrained into us from different places. So I think we need to do more as a society on building those values in, and those values about life, about people, about respect, those things, and tolerance. Despite this world being supposedly more tolerant, is having problems in those places.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to do. If we want better companies in the future, we need to put better values into our society.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the tolerance part is very funny. I mean, we are more tolerant, but we are also way more judgmental nowadays. For instance, there was, I think it was last week or some time ago in the news in the US that one of the NASCAR drivers lost his sponsorship because what his dad said in 30 years ago in some magazine. So I mean, that's just ridiculous in my mind that should affect on what you're doing and what is happening in your life, what someone else has been saying even before you were born. So it's
and that's the power of social media. That's the power of the media at our fingertips, that people are afraid of what happens if I do something. And we need more tolerance. We need more respect for people. We need more understanding of people. And we have to, maybe this is already happening. Maybe there's a generation coming up where this is already happening. But I just see that statistically, the statistics I'm seeing, the values of the values I grew up with from my family are just not present in today's society. Maybe that's just because I'm old and grumpy. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I feel you. I mean, there's of course the homegrown values that you're bringing with you, and for instance, my generation, your generation, we are in a unique position in a way that we have lived pre-internet time, and we are living the internet time. But the ones that are born now, they don't know what's life before that. So.
No, and we can have sometimes the biggest influences on our life, on some of the people's lives now, could be a YouTuber.
Yeah, I mean that's a good example. For instance, we did this one case here in Finland that helps young children not become disconnected from society. So I think it was in Yle News, which is your equivalent of BBC. So a lot of viewers, and when it was on Yle News, it got maybe 500 visits, this page, and then we put it on one of the 16-year YouTube guys, and it got 30,000 visits in 1 hour. So yeah, it's knowing your demographic also is very important.
Yeah.
How do you see businesses as this value creator in future society? Do you see that businesses need to also be supporting that they should have these clear values and not be doing turncoats, whatever is popular every time of the year or day?
Well, I really think businesses should hold fast to their values. And I separate values from their product offering or anything like that, as in the principles of why they exist and what they want to do on Earth while they exist. The challenge for us is the power of the public can be quite intimidating, particularly if you have, as you said earlier, stockholders who their motivation is a return on investment. And this is the challenge that a board would face, in that shareholders, I'm not saying shareholders are just greedy people who don't care, but if there's pressure to do something, the shareholders' primary motivation is to hold the share price up and get a return on their investment, whereas the director's job is to be accountable to the shareholders and continue the objectives of building the company and holding fast the values of the company. So it's a very tricky situation, because to hold all of that in check, somebody at some point is going to have to lose, and the people in the middle who have to try and sort that out are prime for scalping by either side. The shareholders will scalp them, or the customer base will scalp them. So it is a tricky one, and I think maybe where we can be smarter is if we lay out our values and fundamentals at the very beginning, and they're out there and clear. Then you can hold fast to them more publicly because these are published on both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
So I remember Google's "We will do no harm." I think that's still their value somewhere, but in the last few years, they've been implicated in a lot of interesting stuff, including at the moment the revolt within Google about them adapting their search engine for China. In other words, complying with China's restrictions on information.
Yeah, giving up on that.
They've had it out there, and now their staff are holding to their account, because with Google, we don't know what they're doing in various different countries because they're so big, they're doing so many things that don't touch our lives directly, that their staff are doing it. And I suppose that's a really good sign in one sense from Google, that their values are clearly in their employees, that they will hold the management to account to say, come on, this is not what we signed up for.
Yeah, I mean, back in the old days, in the 60s and 70s, you hear these stories of these big companies where they did these very unethical decisions. For instance, Ford Pinto and Monsanto's and pharmaceutical companies who have done in the past a lot of very questionable things. So I think it's very hard nowadays to get that one happening, because it's going to be out there always.
Well, if you look back at the financial crash, one of the primary values, I would argue, of most of these companies was profit. And for a time, they made that profit on paper because that was their goal and that's what they had to do. But nobody really questioned until the very end whether what they were doing was good for society, whether it was good for their customers, and whether it was good for their investors, because the goal was, make profit. So they did, even when it didn't exist.
Yeah, that's regarding those. How do you see individuals within a company? Do they get their voice heard nowadays way easier? Do companies listen? Naturally, if you're a small startup, you listen more eagerly. But let's say a medium-sized company.
I think you should be open to hearing voices. Whether that be voices of disagreement or voices of agreement or voices of challenge, every business should be open to it. I think the issue is that we can easily fall into a trap of saying somebody who disagrees is a malcontent. And it's not necessarily always the case that somebody who disagrees is just, a complainer or a grumbler. Sometimes somebody who disagrees believes there is a valid reason, and being open to that is important. That said, depending on how your management is, and then it comes down to company culture of managers not feeling threatened by people disagreeing with them, and companies embracing that kind of culture of openness and hearing people out. If that only adds to the health of an organization if it can reflect within itself. But if it doesn't, basically it's a bit more of a kind of the vision of the boat with the guy at the front saying heave and all the people rowing and pulling the oars. That's not what a company is. A company is a team working together, but we have to embrace openness. And my team here, I've gone through this journey of going, well, this is where we're going. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is the budget even. Our team know our budget, and they know whether we hit it, whether we didn't hit it, whether we exceeded it. So we can all see where we're at, and we all see the value of our efforts and how we work, and that we're all pulling together for the same goal. So I think that transparency is helpful. The risk of the transparency is, though, that you open too much information, and then you have a scenario where sometimes the organization feels at the control and beck and call of every person. And I think there is a balance there that has to be addressed, but I would always advocate more transparency.
Yeah, I do agree that the transparency and the information that affects the people that you are discussing with is the key, of course, in there. How was it for you? I mean, have you advocated this from day one in your work life, or has it been a learning process throughout the years?
It's been a learning process. I mean, me sharing budgets and things with our team, it's only happened this year, and it was a difficult thing to pull together. And going, well, hang on a minute, I'm feeling a little bit vulnerable, but it really showed people what we were all trying to get to and how we all played a part. And I was inspired by a British company that's just had a shareholder revolt about this very issue of executive pay, and I'll share the story because it's quite relevant. So this company's seen its share value fall by something like 74%. They're shedding jobs on every front. It's a very well-known company, but I won't mention it here. And you know, there are some really talented people there who are on social media getting bashed by their competitors in banter and things, and really working hard for the company. The company's essential issue is leadership and investor confidence. Their revenues have held pretty steady, although they've had some dips. But at this point, this company's had to implement a investor call for more cash to keep the company afloat to manage its debt obligations. And at the same time, the board were going to award themselves £20 million of bonuses. Meanwhile, the employees are having job cuts and all those different things. So for me, that is a sign that the leadership has got the level of transparency and the level of team wrong, and they're paying for it bitterly.
Yeah, I mean the whole executive pay is well, I've always find it interesting that if you're on a top level of organization, you could have very high fixed salary that has nothing to do with the company's success. So I always find if you work on a top management level, having an ownership of the company is aligned with the company performance, and thus, you know, it's more systemic benefit involved in there rather than just getting a huge paycheck and no matter what happens within the company.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be invested in the business's success. Otherwise, it'll just be about, again, the pursuit of money or the pursuit of your own goals at the expense of the organization that you're working for. So you really have to be invested in the business and really want to achieve something for the business. And executive pay, some of the pay is completely ridiculous and bears no resemblance to the performance of the business. And I think it has to be. And, you know, executive pay has such a bearing on the morale of staff that we really need to be responsible in how we deal with that so that people can see, yes, you're a more responsible position, so you're worthy of a higher salary and a better reward system for making sure this works. But if you see abuses whilst, you know, you've got people at one end on the minimum wage and the other people are living in absolute excess, there has to be some redress there to pull that together. Now, I don't think government should do that because I just don't think that would work, because they'll find loopholes and ways around it. I think what has to happen is a company's values have to be questioned. If they can have somebody on, you know, whatever the minimum wage is at the moment, £7 or whatever, and then somebody who earns the lowest paid employee's annual salary in a week. Yep. There's got to be some redress. And if you want morale in the company, a better morale in the company, those people on £7 an hour or whatever the rate is need to see that the management value their contribution and not just leverage it.
Yeah, that's the transparency, of course, that everyone understand what the top executive is getting paid for definitely helps. People still might feel injustice, but at least they, you know, have it all there out in the open and they can discuss about it.
Well, the one thing about human nature is we all think we deserve a pay rise.
Yeah, that always happens. I mean, it's the classical that if you go out and buy a Porsche, you're happy for 3 months, and after 3 months it's going to be just a car on a driveway.
Yeah, the money and wealth is always a moving target.
Yeah, that's I guess that's in our nature. It's both good and bad. It helps us to grow and keep world moving and creating new stuff, and it's both good and bad, definitely.
Yeah.
How do you see the role of news and media in future growth? I mean, do you see that they are relevant, let's say these big news corporations and stuff like that, or do you see that the growth of organization and people will happen more through these social platforms and such?
I think there's so much uncertain about how all of the last 10 years of innovation is going to settle. And I say that because there is a rise now in the big news media doing paid content, shall we say, or premium content, where it's actually funded by a private company, and that sits a little uncomfortable with me. We have the BBC, who is restricted from doing those things here in the UK, and you'll have similar in the US and in Europe and various different countries. You'll have what you class as a public broadcaster that's aiming to be impartial.
Yeah.
But if we look at America, for an example, you've got people like Fox News, you've got CNN. They have their own slant, and their revenue is derived from advertising, which comes from advertisers who support their slant. So I can see that is going to be an issue, in that if you watch Fox News, you'll think President Trump's the best thing since sliced bread, and if you watch CNN, you'll think he's the most treasonous guy the country's ever had as president. And the problem is the truth. So I think there's got to be some settling in that, and I think maybe commercial drivers will settle some of that in terms of revenue. But I think we come back to the issue of what is news. Yeah. And now we listen to the news that agrees with our worldview more, or we watch the news that agrees with our worldview more. So that's an issue that's got to settle, and I'm not sure how it will, but there is a place for news, and there will be a place for advertising built around the news. Social platforms, again, they're going to settle. Twitter, who'd have thought Twitter would take such a place in the news and has such a complaining gripe culture in there now? Not fully, but there's a big percentage of it. If you want to complain, you go to Twitter.
Yeah, you will unleash the 150 characters and be done with it.
Or 240, I think it is.
Oh,
now,
okay, they increased.
Yeah, so you've got those things all settling down, but I think if you're like me, you've probably gone on social media and go, well, all the different platforms to maintain now, there's too much.
Yeah.
There's too much to keep up with the notifications. There's too much to keep up with all the people's posts, the messages. It's just saturated. There's too much for us to actually do. And maybe we'll all end up with AI on our phones that'll respond to things and only filter out all the stuff and just give us the most important stuff, and even reply and talk to our friends.
Reply on my behalf. Yeah.
We'll Google Assistant will schedule all our evenings out with friends and dinners and lunches. Who knows? But I think the place of growth is figuring out how and which of these mediums are really going to help your business. And that comes down to, where is our customers and the problems of our customers most evident, and where are they easiest to reach? Because I have some clients who go, there are too many social networks for us to even possibly maintain and possibly create enough content to fill them all in the right formats. And I say, okay, let's just work on a few, the most important few. So if you're a B2B, work on LinkedIn. If you're B2C, it's Instagram and Facebook. If you're dealing with young people and students, it's Snapchat, because it's just too much. And I think people will become more choosing of where they may be, and that presents challenges and opportunities.
Yeah, and it's also if you look at this, who owns these platforms, they are held by 3 companies. So
Yeah.
that's also going to be a very interesting landscape if it will have some sort of disruption, because it's hard to penetrate that market because they have ecosystems in place and all the data in place. So it's interesting.
Well, I've met so many people who've said to me they're building a new social network, and I think, wow, you're going to need a huge amount of money to even try and break the back of that. And then we come down to, can you? The basis of the fundamentals of innovation is, will it make things easier for people? And I don't know what that is. Maybe the next innovation is some kind of method to amalgamate your network, all your social media into one place and then filter it. But I don't think we need any more social networks. But it is dangerous that we have so much. Three or four companies have so much influence over what we see. I mean, if I was Mark Zuckerberg and decided to be a bit of an evil tyrant, in theory, I could go into the system and rig what everybody's going to see. Now, I'm not saying he does do that or he has done that, but
yeah,
it
he has
is
the possibility of
dangerous.
that. Yeah.
We don't know how it works behind the scenes. What we do know is that here in the UK, at least, there's been a scandal about how our data has been used to manipulate a referendum.
Yeah.
Now, we'll never get to the bottom of exactly how much impact that really had, but companies have looked at it and gone, maybe we could do that. And we don't know whether that's happening right now. And in 10 years' time, I'm sure we'll have outcries and inquiries and all sorts about how this happened and that happened and the other happened that we didn't even know about. And it is dangerous. But, it would be equal as dangerous if the government controlled it too.
Yeah, it's sort of like a lesser of two evils.
It's China then, isn't it? We're China already.
Yeah, and that's definitely a good point, because be that whatever platform, they have the access to data and they can do, if they want, anything with that, and then can drive our decision making or whatever. So
I think the only safeguard against being manipulated through whatever media possible and escaping confirmation bias is to actually take the time to find out for yourself and go to, do your own research. Wikipedia is quite an interesting thing, because generally speaking, it's tempered by all the different viewpoints that people put in, and it has to be cited and various different things. So I found the place of Wikipedia performs a vital function in society of helping people get to the bottom of what's true. And that used to be newspapers. That used to be, in one sense, if you look back on it, we used to have gossip and rumor and myth. And then we had the newspapers and the historians who would tell you what really happened. Now we have social media, which tells us rumors, and somewhere in there is truth and gossip and myth. And we have things like Wikipedia and that is tempered by the mass audience to make sure that we don't end up with propaganda.
Yeah.
So I'm a big advocate of things like Wikipedia that really kind of balance things out and don't actually present an opinion per se. They only cite other sources.
Yeah, I mean, that's I also agree. That's one of the most trustworthiness sites in there. And of course, I can build some AI solution that can change thousands of pages per minute if they want to. But I do also see that people will correct those mistakes in time and fix the content that it has. I think it's one of the UK magazines that. Is it The Guardian, who works on this donation basis, sort of like, so they have adapted this new business model, and they are sort of like this old classical journalism and news. How do you see that working in the future? Do you see that these big media companies could also operate on that basis?
They could do. I don't know. I don't know how. I mean, you have to. The value in at least Facebook is its advertising revenue. That's its money really.
Yeah.
I think the hard bit of getting people to pay for something when they've had it for free is where's the value? So Facebook would have to create something that adds more to their experience. And I don't mean we'll remove just the ads. Now, maybe if the ads get even more intense, perhaps they do. I mean, YouTube has just done this. And I was complaining for a few months before they launched this that the ads were getting more and more and more, to the point where if you watch a 10-minute video, you probably had to endure 4 or 5 ads. So the ads were getting more and more intense. But I haven't found myself compelled yet to pay the $14.99 a month or whatever it is to watch unlimited YouTube with no ads and download videos. So it'll be interesting to see whether YouTube makes that work. Now, if they add more stuff, which they are doing, they're adding more kind of original content that they're commissioning.
Yep.
That then becomes a value piece that can make you consider, well, I will go the extra mile. But I think these social networks, if they want money from their user base, they have to add something else as well as take away the adverts.
Yeah, and especially nowadays, if you go to some site, the ad, it's so well hidden in there that you don't necessarily even recognize that is an ad that you're seeing. Yeah. So you can sort of like embed it there quite easily, and people get misled.
Yeah. I mean, we've just I was downloading some software the other day, and this site had a download button that was actually part of an ad, and I'm not normally stupid enough to fall for ads, but I did fall for this one because the button, it was a completely white advert with a download button. And I was downloading a PDF software so that you can use a print driver to PDF.
Yeah.
And I was on the website and the button was just there, and I just automatically clicked it. And the next thing I was installing some Chrome extension or something. And I was like, oh, I can't believe I fell for that.
Yeah, they are getting more clever on that part. If you look at the growth on an individual level when it comes to this business world and the world of future, how do you see that? What are the most important things that individuals should focus on in growth-wise when they work in organization?
I think, as somebody who's employed people and is responsible for employing people, one of the key things I'm looking for is the willingness to get on with the job and to adapt. And I think as a person, as we go into the new world where we don't really know what the world of work is going to look like, will it be more gig economy than we have now? Will it not? I think the willingness to adapt to change, the willingness to be a bit more entrepreneurial even in the workplace, is a massive asset that people are going to be looking for. I think common sense is something that is in short supply, and thinking things through. But I think it's the core human skills that are going to be more required in a much bigger volume in the future world, because a lot of the technical capability I can see either shifting to AI or shifting to some form of automation. So I think personal skills, interpersonal skills, good values, work ethic, can-do attitude, entrepreneurial spirit will be more so required in the world of work in the next 15 years than they are right now. Because we've had a generation where you can hide behind a screen and send emails. Most of that's going to be done for us.
Yeah.
Most of those kind of inquiries, it's going to be, okay, now the automation can't do this. A human needs to get involved.
Yeah, I think regarding the common sense, I think it was Voltaire or someone who said it back in the back in a long time ago that common sense is not so common anymore, and I do agree on that. That is definitely the case. But it also falls on the one who is asking questions and making assumptions that people think like they or have the same kind of view. So it's sort of like disconnect in there.
It comes down again to not communicating but understanding.
Yeah. What are the common pitfalls that people usually have? You said that to have these kind of human skills and common sense, adaptivity. Are there any,
I think the biggest one you hit on, the really big one you hit on, was the fact that we assume that people think like us. And that is, we've gone through a shift over the last however many years to a very tribal culture in the West, where we have so many different identities you can have. And I'm not meaning like gender identities here. I mean cultural identities, nerd, geeks, all these different, hipsters, and there's gazillions of them. So you have all these different identities that people and they all choose to identify themselves differently and how they communicate differently, their learning styles, all of that presents a challenge. And I think the biggest asset we can have is learning that other people will interpret things differently and being flexible to that. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge we've got. I mean, we see this a little bit in emails. You could send me an email, you could write me an email, and it could be the most happiest email you've ever written. But I receive it, and depending on how I decide that you put those words together, I could go, oh, he's a bit grumpy.
Yeah, he's a total a-hole, and why is he writing this?
And that's going to increase as we get further removed from, when you're on Skype or when we're talking now, I can hear your voice, I can hear the tone of your voice, I can hear whether you're interested, bored, fascinated, that we can read each other.
Yeah.
But when you're behind a screen or you're just seeing words, it's very difficult to interpret that. And I think that's going to be a big challenge.
You mentioned about this automation and such that's going to be a huge part of future when it comes to growth and organization tactics. What else do you see from technological front that can help small or big organizations?
Well, I'm just hoping somebody very, very soon gets all these big companies to move to something like Google Assistant, because I'm fed up of pressing 1 and pressing 5 and going through all of these different systems trying to find a way to solve an issue I've got. That will, in itself, make the world a much happier place.
Yeah, I agree. I've also spent some time in UK, so I think it was maybe 10 years ago. If you wanted to open your own gas pipe or phone line, it took forever, and you repeated the same answers over and over again to 2 different machines, and then you get some operator, and you still need to repeat all the stuff that I don't know if it's still like that, but back in the day it was.
It really is. And, there's a lot of things, like, for an example, there's a lot of things that you can sit on a phone for 45 minutes, technical support, and they walk you through the most basic stuff over and over again. So have you turned it off and on? Yes, of course we've turned it off and on. Have you unplugged it? And it's like, hey. And I see that if we really think about this well, and it takes a far more intelligent person than me to think about, there are ways that we could have our little AI, Google Assistant or whatever it is, and the big company's AI, Google Assistant, sort some of that stuff out between themselves. And the key then is how much time and cost would that remove from our lives and these companies' lives that we could get on with other things.
Yeah.
The question is, what do we do with all these people who are now no longer required because the machines and the AI are doing the work. And in a recent study in the UK, AI developments in the UK, they predict will create 4.7 million jobs. However, it will also mean 4 million jobs being lost. Now, I don't know the detail of where the jobs go, but AI and automation is going to cause some pain.
Yeah, and I would imagine that those jobs that it creates is not for the people who are losing their jobs. So it's a different kind of profile.
So we're going to end up with, my theory, because I've not read it properly, is that some of the lower skilled jobs may be lost and some of the more technical or more looking after the AI jobs will be gained. But we need to think about how do we skill the skills shortage that will create, and the people who haven't got those skills. How do we help them be productive in society?
Because that's one of the big issues, that when you have the AI and automation, that people will lose their jobs the more mechanical the work is. And the creative jobs, I imagine, are the last ones to go, but that might happen at some point. So do you yourself see that something like universal basic income would be a pleasant thing to have then, or?
I would love universal basic income. It would be fantastic. No, I have talked about this with a friend of mine about how it could work. And the problem, it's a fantastic idea. The issue is the economic shift needs so much political will to get there. I'd be very much for something like universal income if we can make the shift, and knowing that if you shift, so in the UK at the moment, there are people who are totally reliant on a social security system of some kind, and there are some people who've never pulled down on that. And that shift will mean that some people will lose and win, and you need a lot of political guts to see that through. But we do need to figure this out, because I can't remember the statistics in the UK, but we're going to have more of an issue of people needing support if we don't find a new economic activity for the people who aren't going to go into these 4.7 million new jobs. We're going to have people who are not economically active, which isn't good for the nation. It isn't good for them, and we need to do something.
Yeah, that's a tricky question, and I don't know what the answer is. Because we're going to find out in 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years, something like that, when things move onwards. But it's definitely like you said, it's very hard for me to also see that the governments are the ones who are going to do it, unless there's some revolt or something like that. Then it might happen, but they are usually not willing to change.
Maybe the machines will do it for us.
Yeah, that would help. So that would clear the things up.
We'll all become batteries to power the machine.
That's the very, very dark view of the future. I always like to believe that we are moving towards a more happier one, at least, because the future is definitely open yet. But if you look at these growth steps that future individuals have, you mentioned that you need to be adaptive, get on with the job and be ready to adapt on that, and having some sort of self-reflection and values on the organization level. That are you working for the right organization? Do you share same values and stuff like that? Of course, the common sense part, which everyone needs to train. That's definitely a key point. And the human-centric skills, the emotions, the creativity, those are the key points. Do you have any more growth steps for individuals that they need to think about when figuring out what they're going to do in future?
I think the biggest one, I mean, we've talked about so many, but the biggest one that hasn't been talked about is when we look at implementing a growth plan, whether it be in your own life or whether it be in a business, you have a society that encourages us to have instant gratification. If it doesn't come easy, give up. We've seen it with the reality shows where you can go on and bypass 30, 40 years of really pushing yourself out there and become number one selling artist or what have you, in 12 weeks. We have, the invention of credit has allowed us to buy everything we want and pay for it over many, many years. So we have a culture that wants things now. But in reality, you look at any of the big entrepreneurial successes, any big business or human achievement, it's been hard slog, day in, day out, consistent, persistent, determined to get something done. Yeah. And when I talk to companies, that's the big thing I say is if we implement something now, you have to be able to see it through day in, day out, day in, day out. So consistency and persistency is a key element I would add to that list.
Yeah, definitely. And then you value it more when you actually worked for it and grinded through it to all the pain and misery. Then it creates more value, at least on a mental level, to yourself.
And it encourages you to be more responsible with what you achieve.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think we need to wrap this thing up, but any last words where people can find more about you, get in touch?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on all of social platforms, but mainly on LinkedIn. And if people want to chat, they can drop me a line on there. We can set up a time to chat or what have you and explore ideas. But yeah, LinkedIn is the great one for me. Dean Seddon. I can share a link if needs be.
Yeah, excellent. So yeah, that was Dean Seddon, director and founder of Maverrik. So great to have you on board, and we definitely need to continue this discussion on another episode.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. The future is here tomorrow. Join the discussion on our LinkedIn page, We Are Futurebuilders, and listen to more Futurebuilders podcast on wearefuturebuilders.com.